So, good evening, one and all. It's glad to have today with us Jeet and Avinab. So, I would really like to thank, first of all, Jeet for coming live for this session and gracing the occasion. And it's Avinab's first debut book. So, in last 2 years in this lockdown, we have done several events, like more than 300 events, I would say, but very few we have done poetry books or launches for the poetry books. So the moment the publisher Penguin India approached us for an online event again for a book poetry book, we were glad to sort of accept it, and we again Jeet Thal was in conversation with Avinab. So what better on a Saturday evening we could have, and Crossword is known for where poets hold court, where authors regale. So this is such an evening where definitely you are going to have a wonderful Saturday evening today. So not taking much time, let me formally introduce Jeet. Everyone is, we are really proud to have Jeet, and he is an award-winning poet and author who was born in Kerala and was educated in Hong Kong, New York, and Mumbai. And his novel Narcopolis in the year, if I'm not mistaken, 2013, he was awarded the DSC Prize for South Asian Literature and shortlisted for 5 other awards, and including the Man Booker Prize and the Man Asian Literature Prize, and of course the Crossword Book Award as well. His 5 poetry collections included Collected Poems and These Errors Are Correct, which won the 2013 Poetry Award from the Sahitya Academy, India's National Academy of Letters. And so, thank you, Jeet, once again. We are really, really, happy and privileged to have you today.
My
And
pleasure.
about Avinab, I definitely have a question, Avinab, if you would answer. What makes you get this title during the course of the event? It's a wonderful title you have selected for your book in terms of a poetry book. So I would love if you could answer that. And Avinab Datta-Areng is a recipient of Charles Pick Fellowship and Vijay Nambisan Fellowship. He's also the editor of Nether, and Annus Horribilis, a collection of poems, is his first debut book. So now I would love to request Jeet to have and take the proceedings or take the conversation, and we are really eager to have and listen to this conversation. So thank you, and please continue.
Thank you, Harshal.
Thanks so much. I mean, I how can I add to that except I'm just going to open the door and let Avinab read from his amazing book. I'm just going to introduce this book, which, by the way, this is the launch, and it will be in bookshops in 2 days on the
Right.
last day of February. I absolutely recommend it. Beautiful book. And I'm just going to read, as by way of introduction, I'm going to read Adil Jasawala's quote for this book. He says, urgent, vital, assured. It's hard to find the right words to describe a first collection that's so alert to surprise and the effects of surprise. Avinab Datta-Areng's lines have sprung from the hard rock of loss, and their flows, even when they twist and turn through the darkest of caverns, both brace and heal. I'm greatly impressed. I think that's a perfect introduction for Avinab to read from his book.
Yeah. Hi. I'll probably get to the poems, which is where I'm most comfortable. But I'm going to start with a more difficult poem so that things get easier along the way. It's called Beheading My Mother. I wanted to make you a garden so I could sulk into the seeds. Your fate made me furious. I hid my anger among the amaranth, shoveling all day at the backyard while you kept buying flower pot after flower pot, stacking them along the stairs your father built until there were no more steps. Walking up every time for some reason I can never look at them, as if I'm crossing a gallery of your most intimate thoughts. I read his diary. I read what he thinks of you. What he thought of you then, he thinks of you now. I bought him another one so I could see the extent of man's hate for his savior. In my mind, it was mythical. It had dissolved the classics. In the evenings, you give me a hand, treating the dirt like a stillborn, bent over, pretending to sing a song you don't know the words for. And for a moment, I can't see your head. As the light keeps dimming, I can see how any of this has been allowed to go on. Yeah, I'm gonna like probably move to a poem which is slightly. I mean, it's called Sunday, but it's. I mean, Sunday is also where like terrible things happen. um, Although you're supposed to rest and stuff. Sunday. Sunlight and anaxylatic flora drink themselves silly. An eastern pinch of sky blurts like it forgot to take its pills. The worm has wept all Sunday while you were reading the newspaper, of watering the taste of a fleck of midnight fruit between your teeth, of the hummingbird disturbed by the sound of hideous undressing, again leaving the portrait of uncut happiness unfinished in the hole. Mist rises towards the balcony and leaves a trace on the rails. M is in the kitchen, rinsing the stained cloth. Wind bends a shrub, exposing its mangled roots. An unsettling wave of sound rises from the valley, like it's time to hear what is made through. Clouds rushing in like the early death of someone you never knew. Yeah,
Thanks, Avinab.
yeah,
Yeah, just that title always got me. I mean, I think, talk about a title that gets attention, beheading my mother, and then of course you get to the end of the poem and you realize that it's about light and dimming.
right, right.
I'm going to read the poem that faces it, which is The Drunk at the Hagia Sophia. The seraphim turn you down. Hear the little nerve birds choking on corks of blood. Fugitive fossil, drenched scroll in someone's selfie frame. You crawl to the blinding filigree and retch outside the Sultan's library. Your history, my friend, but it's not only you. Look at the weeping numbers underneath this dome, spilling their coffee beside the weeping column. It burns you to see that we're all alike after all, first hung between fates and now relics of glistening death. Think, was someone else too loveless here? A patch of mosaic glimmers. Maybe someone was pardoned there. Then light changes its mind. At times, there just might be enough reason to pull a stranger close and ask the impossible of them. Beneath your collarbone, above the heart, a page from no known book crumples. Someone's praying for you. You know it when you're thirsty. Um, in in your introduction in the Penguin Book of Indian Poets, which will be out in a couple of months, you said, and I quote, that the places that you've lived in, because maybe you always wanted to be elsewhere, are places that you've never really thought about much, that you don't really think much about the places you live in because you've always wanted to be elsewhere.
Right.
I wanted to ask, does that still apply?
Uh, I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, it still does, because I I have been living like a very strangely nomadic life where I don't really feel at home wherever I've been moving, and I've constantly been moving. Earlier because of my family, because of my father, and now because I tend to, after a certain point, wherever I am, just feels the strange need to just get out of there. And wherever I've been and wherever I've lived, they only come to me like much later, and after a lot of time, because I find it very hard to associate an idea of home, because I feel entirely constantly like in my head displaced, because I'm always thinking about other things wherever I am. So I spent a long time in Bombay, and earlier before that in the Northeast. Now I am in Goa. Before that I was in Kodaikanal. So uh, I kind of have a very hard time making sense of where I am and finding a kind of sense of comfort with it,
So interesting.
physically.
It's so interesting to hear you say that because uh, when you read the poems in this book, they have such a strong sense of place, and I wonder if,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
wonder if
Sorry. Yeah.
maybe you were saying that it's only later that you get a sense of the place that you were at, and I wonder if maybe you only get a sense of it when you write about it.
Absolutely. Like completely. Like uh, all of the places that I seem to speak of or think of, it comes much later, and it's a very conscious like kind of navigation where I put aside all the other things, because there's a lot of, I come to every place with this entire like shit and like load of baggage of the self, and and this whole dramatic like idea of your own history and all of that. And so when I want to put it in a kind of poetic sense, where I want to write about it, I literally have to sift through that and put it aside. But it somehow comes through, strangely. Like even Bombay, like a city that I lived in for a large part of my life, and a city which makes you think about it. Like, any person would think about Bombay if they lived there. And for the longest time when I was in Bombay, I never thought about it. Like, I did everything, but I never consciously thought about it. But when I left Bombay is when I really started thinking about Bombay, in the sense that I would have liked to have thought about, like when I was actually living there,
Right.
and also when
I,
I was writing about it.
yeah, yeah, it's a retrospective kind of thinking, and I
Yeah, I
think
mean, and also, yeah, and Bombay is not is a city which, like, you cannot pretty much ignore if you're living around.
yeah, for better or worse, you can't ignore it.
Yeah, for better or worse, you can't really ignore it.
Yeah. Do you want to read a couple of poems?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm gonna read Peacocks.
Yeah, that's in the anthology.
Yeah, it's in the anthology as well. Yeah, so I mean, it's very. I mean, somehow the poem came out of it, but like, yeah, I still don't feel good when I read it. A lone truck at midnight humming at the edge of the road. Having forgotten if I've taken my pills, I take them again. I cannot risk a second feeling something plunging a bucket into my heart, tugging and maneuvering the rope so it sinks nicely in before it's abruptly pulled up. Now I'm cling filmed, my feelings bubble wrapped, my thoughts still in me, yet their weight borne by someone else, somewhere. But there's flashes when a blurring strikes. Something in me pushes really close. I feel like wind around a noose. I have to be careful still of myself. Restless, I step out for a walk towards the truck. Its hum is brotherly, like it wants to offer me something warm to eat, run its hands over my head. In the dark of the truck's back, I see eyes, bodies huddled, men staring past me. There's no room between them, but each one sits so singular, almost unaware of the rest, each one as if meticulously working on something alone, undisturbed. I turn around to see what they're seeing, and past the yellow haze like a giant repulsive back of a hand on a faraway treetop, I think I see a peacock, maybe two, maybe more, but not enough. And yeah, I'm gonna read a poem about like having panic attacks and surviving it. Because I mean, like whenever you have a panic attack, you're like you're probably thinking you're gonna die, and like that's and just never ends. Ode to my panic attack. You wake each day within a peach or half buried blade with the feeling that something is simultaneously preserving and fucking you. A thought so naive and clear, like God thinking of themselves. Before the first fuchsias or baby blue eyes, the ones now cowering with the grace of nothing's will as you refract past. Between giving in this time to hell with trying to get any better and convalescing without any work, there's a blue begging that still wants to know. But you are not in you anymore. You are being passed along to camouflage the brain dead cirrus, bitter phantom of eucalyptus struck by lightning. You climb the ringing meadow. It doesn't go away. The breathing doesn't stop. It's what you think you want. It's everywhere. The breathing doesn't stop. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, that must be a tough one to read. The
Yeah, yeah.
the,
I mean,
the breathing doesn't
panic.
stop.
Yeah, panic attacks. Fucking. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
that's the point. I mean, like the point of like a panic attack is it makes you aware of the fact that you're breathing, and it tells you the breathing doesn't stop, and uh, and it can pretty much possibly stop at any point.
yeah,
Like which is the composite panic of it. But like, yeah, the fact that it doesn't stop is also terrifying at the same time. Because at some point you do feel like fuck it, like just get it over with.
yeah. Well, it's a good thing that the breathing doesn't stop. So I'm going to read a poem called
Yeah, I
Comb.
mean, yeah, of course.
Yeah, this is Comb,
Yeah.
sort of a portrait of solitude or loneliness. A woman combs her hair on the balcony while her bird watches from its cage. It has lost most of its sheen and plumage, which makes me wonder if the woman has a son in a faraway country who has, moments ago, without realizing, averted great harm. Her arm moves like neglect for any feeling that might arise from anywhere else. But she has no reason to share my dread. Is there something she's trying to keep from her own head? The comb stutters for a bit. I've always wanted to be this alone, but never have I been so alone. I admit it. Over to you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is probably the closest to like a political poem, like in the book, but also because like you cannot necessarily speak of politics. I mean, at least I can't in an absolute direct sense. So I had to like create this very fictional situation and universe. And also with one of my favorite writers, Thomas Bernhard, who like hated like his country as much as I do, probably. Hating Thomas Bernhard. I was in the woods looking for someone who hates Thomas Bernhard as much as me. I still remember the day after the book burning conference. Thomas Bernhard had knelt down beside a scarred bust and pleaded to me, "Please, you must hate me. Only that will bring peace to you and me." I saw her farmhand slouched on a eucalyptus stump. He asked me to join him for a drink. I told him that I had a problem, which I realized immediately was the worst thing I could have said to him. Passing me his can, he asked me, "Which country is this?" I wasn't sure. I didn't respond. "How are you feeling?" I asked him instead. His face reminded me of a squirrel I had once seen. Without warning, I exclaimed to him, "I hate Thomas Bernard." It was getting misty. I could only think about my ears burning. I wanted to head back and make some notes on them. "I know," he said, "but I don't know who Thomas Bernard is." "Do you have a hat?" he asked me. "You're already wearing one," I told him. "That's what you think," he replied. "Do you have anything at all?" "It's getting dark," I said. "I have something to finish." "Why does Thomas Bernard want me to hate him?" I asked him. "Do you hate your country?" he asked me. I replied, "Does Thomas Bernard hate his country?" "Yes, of course he hates his country," I replied. "Well, then Thomas Bernard hates you too. He wanted you to hate him so no one would suspect anything. He wanted you to know what he already knew." "What?" I asked him. "It's getting dark," he said. "I have something to finish." Yeah. On my way to the Anatomy Museum, already the swans were paddling insatiably towards my heart on the promenade. They wanted to take turns, stretch my heart, wear it over their heads like a balaclava. I was aware that it might be unsafe to walk out of the house exposed like that, inside out. But given where I was going to, it came naturally. This is what I was inside. These were my possessions. How entrancing the sycamore fanning my cerebrum. How exhilarating to have the hummingbird hover above my aorta. To walk past the bridge, ignoring the ominous graffiti, past the concrete steps, leaping over the turnstile, my blood lighting up the living offices, possessed by a prenatal reverie, but aware this doesn't necessarily change anything. to declare, here I am, I'm ready. There is something inside me. I have preserved its secret by not uttering it. Yeah.
All right. Um, I'm going to read something that resonates off that poem and the Thomas Bernard poem. This is called Letter to My Mother. I drank too much Hoopoe Crown so I could see you while the world got things done. Things were getting done, even in blinding blue air. I saw the shepherd descending the hill, the kite's shadow filmed over him as he pondered, perhaps, the sweet persecution of living. Past the thicket, he drank from the stream, a hovering lip, my spine turned to milk. To not think of sex or the revolution. Tonight, a distant wildfire will singe the civet's back, resolving nothing. The urge to harm will come and go. Violence will be the contrail singing to your shadowed spine. I will give in as long as the shaved pineapple shows up on the fence. I will again recall your words I can seldom follow. The opposite of compassion is more compassion. The opposite of love is always more love. Bleak, bleak, and true. We have some comments. I don't know if you can see them.
Can I? Where do I have to go to chat?
Well, no, let me do it. Just asking you, I think we just lost you, Avinab. Okay, well, until he comes back, I'm going to read something, I guess. And if he doesn't come back, well, at least we got 30 minutes. Okay, this is called Montparnasse. And as we know, there are a number of poets buried there, including Baudelaire. Montparnasse. On closer inspection, there was nothing that suggested dehydration. Maybe it was merely our differences of opinion turning you a pale green. Somebody must love you like this. I wanted graves, you wanted water. At the tomb, I saw fresh bird shit and resisted thinking of his work. This would be the last cemetery we were ever going to visit together. There would be enough time for literature and bird shit. But it was you who said, that looks like a fingerprint there on the shit. And true enough, it was, or at least it resembled the distinct lines of a person's fingers. I wanted to kiss the bird's cloaca, then you, then whoever's hand that finger belonged to. You kneeled beside the tap to drink. Sunlight, the bad actor, crashed through the maples. My lines to him I forgot. My lines to you I whispered into the water. The tomb gave its best, did nothing at all. Far at the entrance, the guard explained something to an old woman. She looked like she understood. There's a line here where you say, at the tomb, I saw fresh bird shit and resisted thinking of his work. Whose work does that not
This was actually Beckett's grave.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and there was like fresh bird shit on his grave, and like and I kind of like thought that like he would have loved that, and he would have loved the fact that there was like a fucking fingerprint on the bird shit.
Right.
So somebody
Or
must have tried.
not, who knows? Right.
Yeah, I mean, I know he would. It would have made like some kind of sense to him. Like I was thinking of that.
Let's talk for a minute or two about dreams. Uh,
Right.
I get the sense that your poems often seem to skim the same surface that the dreams exist in. If it's a
Right.
water body, these poems often seem to skim the exact surface that dreams belong in. And um, I mean, I think that would be a fairly exhausting or very personal kind of space in which to dip into, is it?
Yeah, I mean, what I started doing is a lot of the poems, like not a lot, like a certain like portion of the poems that I usually write, and this is when the voice gets muddled because there's a specific way that I try to like write in, and then there are these dreams. So what I do is I literally just write them down, uh, and somehow then obviously chop them up, craft them into poems.
Right.
Without any interference from me. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, this sounds like an absolutely like
No, in fact, I don't.
I-
I don't think that's true at all. I think you're misrepresenting your process because you're right. It is a dream, but in fact, there's a lot of you in it because you shape it and you make it into a
yeah, yeah,
narrative.
absolutely. So what I do is like I write down the dream as it comes, and then I try to like shape it into like a specific poem.
Yeah,
Uh,
very
you
much.
know,
So it
yeah.
is very much a crafted piece of
No, no,
writing that.
absolutely. I mean, why else? I mean, otherwise it wouldn't be a poem. It would just be me writing it down in a
Sure.
notebook about my dreams. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, but a lot of the poems like have happened that way. Uh, I mean, I mean, we all might agree that like sometimes you like. I mean, you write the perfect dream, write the perfect poem in your dream. You
Yeah.
know, which you
Yeah.
probably will never write. And it just keeps haunting you, sometimes you just wake up and you're like, shit, I had like the most perfect poem in terms of like everything that you wanted to say specifically, and wanted to get at, but it never kind of gets there, and like you follow language to get to that point. I mean, this is also
Sure.
like a very spiritual depth might be or is, which it is to some extent. I mean, it is religious, at least for me, because I do not believe in organized religion. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Organized lines rather than organized religion.
organized
I'm
lines always over organized religion. Yeah,
right.
for sure.
Okay, I'm gonna read a poem that I think very specifically and very deliberately skims the dream world. This is called Dream.
Right, right.
Three pigs push their snout on dried leaves and blow them away. The tiny particles of fear that appear when a cloud parts walk with me, turning sinewy, then calloused, maybe waiting for a bird to take them under its wings. There is no bird in sight, but I can't really see, walking as I am, as if my mind is arriving from behind me, my body perforated, a ticket that was never used, but still given to imagine what laughter looks like when it skims the surface of water, when all our names are said at once. The fear still soars, and I know the fur it leads to, the wild caressing round the corner. After all, I couldn't overcome, slowly pulls down the blanket from its face, but it's friendly. It waits for me to close my eyes, waits for me to turn in towards my easiest tide and sorrow before whispering something into my ears that will be of no use to me tomorrow. I only just noticed the internal rhyme there, the sorrow and the tomorrow. Something you want to read to follow that one?
Yeah, sure. Like I've been trying to write like these like broken sonnets, like which are like like I feel like form like is insanely useful, like to
Yeah,
somehow like it's the opposite of like being limiting,
sure.
sometimes
Yeah.
like uh, your father's shirt. No matter how many times I was told that the russet stain on it was paint, my mind only saw blood. First blood, then paint, then disbelief. I never believed you. My sense of worth didn't let me. I fathered my fear until it turned friendly. My son usurped me. What you gave up slowly revives, greening above the surface. But the mind meanders towards what it first sees. I fail to see your longing for your father as a footnote to me. How could any love that drew from within the same source as your love for him, its dedication, be untrue? I was deceived by my destiny of fathers. In my life's revolutions of fathers, my answer, too, was disguised in a father. But the mind meanders towards what it first sees. First father, then fear, then flounder. Yeah.
First father, then fear, then flounder. There's a question here about who your favorite poets are, but I don't think you should answer that because it's a list that could go on for a
Yeah,
couple of
I
days.
mean, yeah.
Instead, I'm going to twist that a little bit and ask you, um, what do you read other than poetry?
Oh, like I have this. I pretty much read everything. I read the backs of like bottles of alcohol, like soaps, like stuff like that. Like I pretty much like like this is like generally, and I read them very seriously. Like like and apart from that, if I have to seriously answer that, I probably read a lot of like music lyrics because music has been like very important. Although like, I do not see where the influence is, but I would like to be influenced by the music that I listen to. Like I wish that this book was like this very CD like low key produced post punk album. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's obviously not. Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, but yeah. So influences work really strangely. So yeah, like probably lyrics a lot, which is
In
also
fact,
because it also like yeah.
I think it'd be great to have a song list to go along with this book. What's the song list
Yeah,
for
yeah.
this?
I mean, music has been like this very big like influence like for me. Like can probably because I cannot like play any instrument and I've never like had my hand in it. Uh, but also like a lot of writers probably feel the same way about like music. Unless you're like lucky like you who can play the guitar and
I think it's
also
poets. I think it's poets who feel that way about music, who feel very powerfully
yeah,
about
yeah,
music.
yeah.
I don't think prose writers feel about music
Feel
in
that
quite
way,
the same
right?
way that poets do. For poets, it's a really a kind of article of faith. I think music.
Yeah, I think they feel like it's like a higher like faith that they're seemingly missing out on. and if they don't like, like, I mean, because you have to be like a certain amount of crazy to actually be like a serious poet, right? Like, you have to be deluded, like
I
really.
mean,
And
I can
the
totally,
longer and longer that I'm writing poetry, I really feel that way. I mean, I have to be insanely deluded to keep writing, like, because I have like it's a kind of madness.
yeah. But then what isn't? It's a madness to
Yeah,
live in
what
this.
isn't? But like, yeah, this seems like something that like you are somehow like trying to bring it back into like the world and like make
I
sense of.
mean, it. There's a lot of madness in the world right now, and I think
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of
exactly.
madness in the world throughout our time, and will be in the future. At least the poet has uh, the recourse or the ability to channel some of that madness into beautiful lines on a page. That's something, you know.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
I,
seriously.
I think it's 7:41, and we are nearing the end of this. Should we end with a couple of poems?
Sure. Okay, mise en scene.
Yeah.
By the time they had passed the pile of burning bodies at the station, their arguments had become irreversibly benign, which is to say, they could no longer end or arouse them. Meanwhile, the whales continued their airborne salutations for the kind hearted tourists. She was leaving him, walking out the door, while he signed for a thin cardboard package. The knowledge of the mother being ill slowly seeped in through the chink of the door. Several speeches, steady vortex of fear on a paper rose. There was a name on the list phonetically identical to yours. We sat at the screen that resembled the eviscerating childhood blunder. Great friendships slithered past overgrown sedge near the tracks. Each puddle, whether outside the waning industries or on the slushy trail, was a speech balloon that said, "Don't leave me, please don't leave me. This is changing the world." Yeah, I'm gonna read like. Did I read Pained Horse Exiting the Frame? I
No,
didn't, no?
no, no, you didn't. You should
Alright.
read that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like. So yeah, this is like pretty much like how like a dream works, and then like I would try to like write it down.
Yeah.
Pained Horse Exiting the Frame. Nobody knows who I am, but they know everything about everything else, including the favorite wristwatch brands of lunar moths. This is what I heard moments before the horse startled me. His front legs were hobbled. He hopped past me, turned around, then hopped past me. It seemed like he loved my thoughts. He wanted to circle them endlessly. Or maybe he wanted me to think of something else. We couldn't be sure. I remembered that Malcolm Lowry had once punched a horse unconscious, so I invoked him. But by then, my father's failures had begun to balm the whim. It shone in the horse's dark mane. I climbed over the fence to my house. I got him the leftover soup. It was almost dawn. Both of us had absolutely, perfectly misunderstood each other. I asked him a question I'll never repeat to anyone for two reasons. This was when I realized that he might be getting ready to leave. He said, I am leaving. This surprised me, made me inconsolable. Firstly, because I knew now that he could speak. Secondly, of all the things he could have said, he conveyed to me the end. I wanted to hurt him. I dug out the camera from my backpack. I recorded him leaving.
That's it's a dream, but it's also just a kind of a devastating comment on families.
Yeah,
Thanks
of
so much.
course.
Thanks so much for that reading. Um, I so before we end, I just want to hold this book up. Beautiful book, beautiful poems inside. I urge you to pick up a copy at Crossword or whichever bookshop you find close to you, and share in these poems that seem so timely for the moment, the long moment that we're going through.
Yeah, but you should clarify that the book is not about the pandemic. Yeah, I
I
mean,
think you
like,
should.
I mean, I mean, probably if it helps itself, but like, in the sense, like, it's not, uh, it's, like, because everyone thinks that it's about the pandemic for some reason.
Is that why you dropped the poem "Pandemic"? You didn't have that in this book because,
Yeah, that's exactly why. Fuck, you noticed it.
yeah, I did notice it. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so people, this book is not about the pandemic. It's about the years of our lives. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, see you on
Thank
the
you,
other
G.
side. Oh, thank you, Avinab.
Thank you.